Right now, on March 12th, the New York Times published the most detailed damage assessment of Iranian strikes on U.S. military assets that has ever been made public. Not 3 countries, not 5. Al Jazeera confirmed 9 sovereign nations hit, and the NYT went deeper, mapping the internal damage across the entire American military network in the region. The NYT cross-referenced satellite imagery, official statements, and social media to confirm at least 17 American military facilities damaged, nearly half of all U.S. military sites in the Middle East. That is not a list of close calls. It is a documented record of the largest simultaneous assault on American forward military infrastructure in the entire modern Gulf era. Iran did not improvise this. Every target on that map was selected in advance, assigned a weapon system, and activated the moment the first American bomb fell on Tehran on February 28th. The NYT's own sources, unnamed U.S. military officials, told the paper that the intensity of Iran's strikes showed Iran was better prepared for this war than many inside the Trump administration had assumed. In my view, that admission matters more than any damage figure. This campaign was never designed as a one-night exchange. It was built as a sustained operation with a pre-loaded target list ready to execute. Let's start with the geography, because every location on that damage map was chosen for a specific operational reason. And the logic connecting those 9 countries is the real story underneath the headline. Al-Udeid Air Base in Qatar, the largest U.S. installation in the Middle East and headquarters of U.S. Central Command, sits roughly 1,200 kilometers from Iran's western batteries, well within solid fuel missile range. The Fifth Fleet headquarters in Bahrain was struck multiple times. The NYT reports the Pentagon estimated damage from the first hit alone at $200 million. Ali al-Salam Air Base in Kuwait was hit with ballistic missiles. Muwafaq Salti in Jordan was targeted. Erbil in northern Iraq reported powerful explosions near the U.S. consulate and airport at the same time. Saudi Arabia's Riyadh heard loud explosions near its eastern province. The UAE alone reported 165 ballistic missiles, 2 cruise missiles, and 541 drones fired at its territory in a single coordinated wave. The UAE Ministry of Defense confirmed 21 drones reached civilian targets and 3 migrant workers were killed. The Palm Jumeirah in Dubai was hit. The Burj Al Arab caught fire from falling debris. And then there is Cyprus, RAF Akrotiri, struck by an Iranian drone, pulling the United Kingdom directly into the physical footprint of this conflict, whether London chose to be there or not. What the NYT map reveals is that Iran wasn't targeting military hardware at random. It was systematically dismantling the command and logistics architecture that keeps American operations in the region functional. You don't just hit the gun, you hit the radar, the fuel depot, the command relay, and the runway, all in the same operational window, forcing the entire network to question its own reliability at once. The NYT flagged the costliest losses specifically: a THAAD radar in Jordan worth up to $500 million, and an AN/FPS 132 early warning radar in Qatar that cost $1.1 billion to construct. Those were not random hits. Radar and communications were Iran's clear priority. The systems that detect launches, coordinate intercepts, and keep the American defensive network across the region functioning. In my view, the key detail buried in the NYT investigation is this: Iran activated that entire list at the same hour, with enough simultaneous launches to saturate air defenses across 5 Gulf states at once. Drop a comment. Did Washington fully anticipate the scope of what Iran executed on February 28th? Or did this target list reveal something about Iranian planning that genuinely caught the Pentagon off guard? If this kind of sourced breakdown is why you watch this channel, hit the like button. It helps more people find this analysis instead of the surface-level version most outlets are running today. Next, we go weapon system by weapon system. What Iran actually fired, why specific missiles match specific targets, and what the intercept results reveal about real gaps in American air defense coverage. Iran launched a $35,000 drone. The U.S. fired a $4 million interceptor to stop it. Then Iran launched another, and another, over 2,000 times since February 28th. On March 12th, that math is not moving in Washington's favor, and the numbers behind this asymmetry are more alarming than most coverage is capturing right now. The Stimson Center published this calculation. For every dollar Iran spends building a Shahed 136, the UAE spends $20 to $28 to intercept it. Applied across 2,000 launches, that ratio is financially unsustainable. Lockheed Martin built roughly 600 Patriot interceptors in all of 2025. The CFR confirmed the U.S. burned through more interceptors here in under 2 weeks than it transferred to Ukraine across 4 full years. That stockpile depletion is the backdrop for everything that follows. The Shahed campaign was never meant to win the war alone. It was built to drain the magazine before the ballistic missiles arrived. Iran's weapon selection was deliberate. Each system was matched to a specific target type for a reason that reveals how carefully this campaign was planned long before February 28th. The Shahed 136 is Iran's most deployed weapon. It costs $20,000 to $50,000, flies low, and carries a 50-kilogram warhead. Its strength is not sophistication. It is volume and the cost trap it creates for every defender. Every Shahed on radar forces one choice: fire a $4 million interceptor or risk a $35,000 drone reaching a port, an airport, or a military installation critical to American command operations in the region. The UAE confirmed that out of 941 Iranian drones detected through March 10th, 65 reached their targets, striking ports, airports, hotels, and Amazon data centers across the country. A 93% intercept rate sounds strong until you calculate what it costs to achieve it and what depleted stockpiles are left. Reserves that require months to replenish at current American manufacturing capacity. Now move up the arsenal. The Shahed was the opening layer. Exhaust defenses, activate radar networks, drain interceptor stockpiles, clearing the path for what came next. French TV channel LCI reported on March 6th, citing its Iran correspondent, that the Khorramshahr 4 was deployed against Al-Udeid in Qatar and the 5th Fleet headquarters in Bahrain in the same strike wave. The Khorramshahr 4 carries multiple warheads and has a range exceeding 2,000 kilometers. It was officially deployed in early February 2026, weeks before the war started on February 28th. Iran fast-tracked that missile's operational readiness, specifically to have its most advanced system combat-ready before this conflict began. The weapon entered service. The war followed weeks later. The Khaybar Sheikhan, fortress breaker, was the second primary ballistic system used. Its 1,450-kilometer range covers every American installation across the Gulf from Iran's western launch positions. The Khaybar Sheikhan carries a warhead that adjusts trajectory in the terminal phase, the exact seconds when Patriot and THAAD systems lock onto a predicted flight path to execute their intercept calculation. A small correction at ballistic speeds shifts the impact point outside the interceptor's engagement window. The defender fires, the missile adjusts, the intercept misses. The THAAD radar in Jordan, worth up to $500 million, confirmed destroyed by satellite, was hit first to blind the detection layer before the main ballistic strike package arrived. In my view, that sequencing is the most important detail in the NYT damage report. Blind the radar first, then fire the ballistic missiles. That is doctrine, executed across 9 countries in one operational window. This week, CSIS flagged debris from a Russian-produced Guran-2 drone recovered in the UAE, serial markings traced to the Kupol plant in Ijevsk, Russia, with Russian anti-jamming navigation systems installed inside. If confirmed, Russia is not simply watching this conflict from the sidelines. Russian-manufactured drones may be flowing directly into Iran's strike packages, hitting American military assets in the Gulf right now. That detail changes everything about the geopolitical frame, and it is exactly where the next section begins. Because once Russia enters this supply chain, no government can still call this a purely regional conflict. Iran did not use a naval blockade to shut down the world's most critical oil corridor. It used drones that cost $35,000 each, and it worked. The Strait of Hormuz, through which roughly 20% of all global oil moves every single day, has effectively stopped functioning since March 4th, 12 days before this video was published. The IRGC declared the strait closed on March 4th. On March 11th, their spokesperson stated publicly, "Expect oil at $200 per barrel." That was not a negotiating position. That was a market forecast delivered at gunpoint. At least 10 vessels have been struck since February 28th, killing at least 7 seafarers according to the International Maritime Organization. 3 ships were hit by projectiles in a single day on March 11th alone. Iran did not need mines or a formal naval blockade. RBC Capital Markets' global commodity strategy head Halima Croft explained what actually happened, speaking to NPR this week. Iran launched drone strikes near the strait. Insurers pulled coverage, shipping companies withdrew. Traffic dropped 70% immediately, then to near zero, with no conventional naval exchange required. The Strait of Hormuz has never been closed in its entire modern history. Neil Atkinson, former head of oil at the IEA, told CNBC on Monday, "This is a potentially game-changing and unprecedented energy crisis. Not a supply disruption, not a price spike, an unprecedented energy crisis." The framing of a man who ran oil analysis at the IEA for years and witnessed every Middle East escalation of the modern era. Now let's look at what the closure actually means in numbers, because the downstream effects extend far beyond the oil price headline on any given trading day. The strait carries 20 million barrels per day. Alternative pipelines handle roughly 9 million, leaving an 11 million barrel daily shortfall with no existing route to cover the gap. 1/5 of all global LNG supply transits the strait. 30% of Europe's jet fuel supply passes through it. 1/3 of all global fertilizer trade moves through this single waterway. Urea prices at the New Orleans fertilizer hub have already risen from $475 to $680 per metric ton, according to CNBC. A 43% jump before a single spring planting disruption has appeared in American farm markets. About 84% of the Middle East's polyethylene, used in packaging bottles and pipes, transits the strait. Supply chain effects compound across industries and take weeks to surface fully at the retail level. Brent and WTI both briefly topped $119 per barrel on Monday, their highest since 2022, before pulling back sharply as markets whipsawed on conflicting signals about the strait's status. Rystad Energy's Janev Shah put Brent at $135 if conditions hold 4 months. ExxonMobil's chief economist told CNBC he sees more scenarios where the strait stays hard closed than scenarios where traffic quickly resumes. In my view, that statement from a sitting major oil company economist outweighs any government reassurance, because it reflects what the market data shows, not what officials need to project publicly. Iraq and Kuwait have already begun shutting in oil production because they cannot export crude that has nowhere to go. The UAE and Saudi Arabia face the same constraint if the closure extends further. The IEA released 400 million barrels from global strategic reserves, unprecedented in scale, buying weeks of buffer, not months, against a sustained closure at full Gulf production levels. Here is the detail most coverage is not yet connecting. Iran is still exporting its own oil through the Strait to China, uninterrupted, while attacking vessels from other nations attempting the same transit. Tanker trackers confirmed Iran shipped at least 11.7 million barrels through Hormuz since February 28th, all to China, while Western and Allied shipping in the same corridor has ground to a near total halt. What that reveals is not just a military strategy, it is an economic negotiation in drone strikes. Your supply moves, everyone else's stops, protecting the one relationship Tehran cannot afford to damage. China imports roughly 25% of its oil through this corridor. That selective pass tells you exactly how Iran calculated its ceiling and who it chose to protect while shutting the door on everyone else. China buys roughly 90% of Iran's oil exports. And right now, Beijing is watching the country. It depends on get bombed and doing almost nothing about it. That gap between China's economic exposure and its political response is one of the most important and underreported stories of this entire conflict on March 12th. Foreign Affairs published its analysis this week with a blunt headline, Why China Won't Help Iran. The core argument is 3 words. Beijing cares about the oil, not the regime. China imported more than half its crude oil from the Middle East in 2025. Iran alone accounted for roughly 13% of China's total seaborne crude intake, according to Kepler. That is a significant exposure, but the conventional framing breaks down. Foreign policy estimates Beijing had 104 days of oil coverage in January and was on track to reach 140 to 180 days by end of 2026. Nomura's chief China economist Ting Lu calculated that Hormuz oil accounts for only 6.6% of China's total energy consumption, because over 30% of Chinese final energy now comes from electricity, not oil. That is the result of deliberate policy. China spent years insulating itself through electrification, domestic renewables, Russian pipeline supply, and strategic reserve stockpiling. In my view, China designed its energy strategy precisely for this scenario, and is now watching the world scramble for oil while sitting on reserves and pivoting quietly to Russian supply. Russia supplies more than 17% of China's oil through land pipelines immune to any Hormuz disruption. Every week the strait stays closed, that Russian supply line looks more strategically valuable. Foreign policy assessed this week that this crisis may ultimately strengthen China's position, because it validates every diversification decision Beijing made over the past decade. China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi told reporters on March 8th this was a war that benefited no one, while confirming that Xi Jinping and Trump are preparing to meet in Beijing later this month. In my view, that summit matters enormously. Beijing won't risk its U.S. trade relationship over Iran, but it will extract every ounce of leverage from being the one major power not bleeding stability right now. Here is the picture that emerges when you pull all of this together. The damage map, the weapons doctrine, the Hormuz closure, and China's restraint, because each layer connects directly to the next. Iran demonstrated on February 28th that it could simultaneously strike 9 countries, saturate 5 air defense networks, and close the world's most critical oil corridor using drones that cost less than a family car. The U.S. intercepted most of those strikes, but at a cost per engagement ratio unsustainable over weeks of conflict, depleting interceptor stockpiles that manufacturers need years to replenish. The Gulf states demonstrated that they cannot protect their own infrastructure from Iranian strikes, regardless of their political alignment, and that hosting American bases made them targets, not shields. And China demonstrated something quieter. that 2 decades of diversification and reserve building can insulate a major economy from a shock, sending gasoline prices soaring across the US and Europe at once. Goldman Sachs today raised its Brent forecast and models 21 days of near zero straight flows before any recovery, warning spot prices could exceed their 2008 peak of $147 if flows stay depressed through March. The war is in its 12th day with no ceasefire framework. Trump said there will be no deal except unconditional surrender. Iran responded by electing Khamenei's son. Mojtaba Khamenei was elected supreme leader on March 8th and has not made a single public statement since, leading analysts to read his silence as continuity, not compromise. What happens next, whether the strait reopens, stockpiles hold, or Trump C opens a diplomatic channel, will determine if this is a contained shock or a structural reset of the global energy order. In my view, the NYT map is not just a damage report. It is a record of the moment when the assumptions that held the Middle East together for 4 decades were tested at once, and several of them did not hold. If this breakdown gave you the full picture behind the headlines, subscribe and leave a comment below. What do you think happens next? A deal, a longer war, or something nobody has fully modeled yet?